Hello and good afternoon, everyone. So, I am Jonathan P. Manigo and I will be your speaker for this workshop. So, we are now on the third stage of design thinking, which is on the ideation stage or to ideate, the ideate stage. So, in this stage, unlike in the define stage where you focus your attention to a problem, in the ideate stage, you will be as broad as possible here. So during the define stage, you focus, but here you you become as broad as possible. So and again, design thinking is not a linear process. It doesn't mean that after this stage you will necessarily be going to the next stage, which is the prototype stage. You can actually go back to the empathize stage and to the define stage if ever there are questions that arise during the ideate stage that will need you to redefine the problem again. So for this workshop, you are expected to apply an ideation technique to come up with innovative ideas as possible solutions to the design challenges or problems identified during the define workshop. So, what is ideation? So, ideation is basically the short term for idea generation. So, ideation, idea generation. So, it's all about generating ideas. And in this stage, uh, you will undergo a process of going wide in terms of concepts and outcomes. So meaning you make your ideas as broad as possible to cover all possible solutions and as many as possible so that you will have a lot of options when you want to realize these ideas or make a prototype. So the ideation stage provides the fuel and the source material for the next stage, which is prototyping. So these ideas will serve as the building blocks that you may use later in the prototype stage. So when you perform ideation, the solutions that you will generate or the ideas that you will generate are usually creative and innovative solutions, especially if you apply ideation techniques. So this could really be beneficial to your targeted user. So this stage is also what we call this can be described as a judgment-free stage. So again, you don't care if it's a good or bad idea yet. Judgment is actually reserved for the last stage, which is on testing, the last stage of design thinking. And in this stage, we just focus on quantity over quality. So we don't care if it's a good or bad idea. The quality of the idea doesn't matter yet, but on the quantity. So as many as ideas as possible, as broad ideas, as wild, the wildest ideas that you can think of. So quantity over quality. So you don't care if they're really exactly gonna solve the problem yet, as long as you have a lot of options, you have a lot of ideas. So in this phase, you need to question the obvious. So usually the obvious solution is not the best solution. So it is, yes, it could be, it is still a solution, but not entirely appropriate or practical to your targeted user. So in this stage, you also need to reformulate your beliefs. So sometimes we have misbeliefs and misconceptions, and ideation, especially when done with a group, actually this should be done in a group, this will help you correct these misconceptions and contribute more ideas. And lastly, in this phase, you will be redefining the existing solutions or approaches. So sometimes a problem already have an existing solution, but that may not be entirely able to solve the problem. So that is why you need to disrupt the status quo and redefine or uh, change the existing solutions. So the main idea again behind the ideate step is in design thinking is to generate just generation of ideas and then try to segregate them into categories. So generate ideas and then cluster them into categories. So without using any judgment yet just classifying these ideas, this will help you in just brainstorming without judgment. So this will help you in bringing all the ideas to the table and help proceed to the next step called prototyping, where these ideas will be validated and checked for their feasibility and value. So according to Hasso-Plattner from the Institute of Design at Stanford University, it is not about coming up with the right idea, but it's about generating the broadest range of ideas or possibilities. So that is basically what ideation is all about. So here are the benefits of ideation. So ideation can help you ask the right questions by considering the users, their needs, and insights about them. So I have mentioned earlier that you can actually, after ideation, you can actually go back to the define stage and ask, define the problem again. So basically, it can help you ask the right questions, especially if you have generated an idea that may be possible in solving the problem, but you have not defined the specific problem yet. So you need to go back to the define stage and ask the right questions. So ideation can also help you step beyond the obvious solution. As I have mentioned earlier, the obvious solution is not usually the most or the best solution. So this will increase the innovation potential of your solution. And lastly, ideation can help you bring together team perspectives and strengths. So ideation must actually be done with a group. You cannot ideate with yourself because there's no one to make a feedback of your ideas. So you must do ideation in a team. So this can then bring together team perspectives and strengths. Okay, so what are the characteristics of successful ideation? So ideation is adapting or adaptable. So since you base your ideas on the user's needs and insights, so you specifically tailor your ideas or the solutions to the problem based on the user's needs and insights. So it's also connecting. It connects the different ideas from the group, from your team members, and combine the ideas to come up with the best solution. Also, I have mentioned this earlier in passing, that a successful ideation is disrupting. So you have to disrupt the status quo. You redefine the existing solutions and improve them as much as possible. So ideation is also flipping. So what if you flip your ideas? You consider the opposite. Could it work? Maybe. But again, we still don't care yet because this is a judgment-free stage. So who knows? The opposite idea may work. Another characteristic is dreaming and imagining. So make your ideas as wild and out of this world as possible, and as out of the box as possible, and there's no limit to your imaginations when doing ideation. So a successful ideation should also be experimental. So you ask, what if we do this? What if we do that? And try to find out later during the prototyping and testing stage if it works or not. So you experiment. There's nothing wrong with that. It can experimenting with different ideas, different scenarios can actually help you come up with the best solution. So successful ideation can also help you. It can also help you recognize patterns. So basically, you connect different ideas, cluster them together, and what makes them similar, and determine what makes them similar or different. So basically, determining the pattern. And of course, a successful ideation means that you're always curious. So always be curious and don't be afraid to speak out all of your ideas to the group so that you will come up with the best or possible solution. So we will now be introducing the different ideation techniques, but I can't cover all of them. There are actually a lot of ideation techniques. So the most common way of ideation is, I think all of us have done this, is brainstorming. So in brainstorming, you usually start again with your problem statements. Focus on one problem at a time. So one problem, then discuss it with your teammates. So you write down, draw, or act out ideas and build on others' ideas. So usually, again, ideation is done within a group. So you cannot have a successful ideation if you don't collaborate with other people. So this is the most common. We have already, most of us have already done this. So another ideation technique is brain dumping or brain dump. So in brain dumping, you again start with the problem statements and you ask your team members or the participants to write down their ideas on sticky notes. So this should be done individually and silently. So you basically dump all of the ideas that you can think of as a solution to that problem. So you limit the writing time, and once completed, have each member of the group or have each participant present their ideas to the group and stick them on the wall. So I think maybe most of you have already done this kind of ideation technique, which is brain dumping. So this is an example of brain dumping. So the problem is, how might we make the park a place of wellness for all? And each of the participants or members of the group posted their ideas individually. So that's the brain dumping. The next ideation technique is brain writing. So in brain writing, you start with problem statements, and then you ask the participants to write down ideas on paper or index cards. You limit the writing time, and after the time is up, the participants pass their cards to the next person and expand upon the idea. So unlike brain dumping, this now requires collaboration within the group. So once completed, have each participant present their cards. So this is an example of brain writing. So the problem or the issue is all applications are received at the same time because all 700 agencies have the same deadline. So person 1 have 3 ideas, and then he passed the ideas to person number 2, wherein person number 2 suggested additional ideas for person 1's idea number 1 and idea number 2. So basically, you build up on the previous person's idea. Okay, another ideation technique that you can consider is SCAMPER. So SCAMPER is actually an acronym for substitute, combine, adapt, modify, put to another use, and eliminate and reverse. But it's not, it's not actually a different stages, a linear stage. You can actually, again, it's not necessarily that you start with substitute first and then next is combine. No, It can be scamper, it can be campers or ampers. So it depends on uh, which uh, which technique you use first. So either substitute first or modify first and so on. So in substitute, basically you replace one part of the product or prototype with another one that works better. So in combine, you put different components together to improve a product, so you combine. In adapt, update the product to a new customer preferences or user insights. In modify, you change how the product looks, its appearance and presentation. And in put to another use, so basically you use the product for a purpose for which it was not originally designed. Eliminate, you get rid of the parts that are almost useless or not used by the user or clients. And in reverse, you deconstruct the product or rethink some of its main pillars. So basically you reverse engineer the product. That's why it's called reverse. Okay, just an example of scamper. The scamper challenge in this case is invent a new type of wristwatch. So if you want to use the substitute technique, so one way could be to use natural wood or rocks instead of the steel material. If you want to use the combine technique, maybe create a space for easy instant access to medications when the alarm goes off. So you have a watch that has some maybe compartments there for medication. So you combine basically a compartment for medication and a watch. And then in adapt, you can use the wristwatch as a reflective mirror when lost. So you can use it as there's a mirror now. So if you're lost, you use it as a reflective mirror to signal maybe your rescuers, if ever. So it can adapt to a situation wherein you were lost. Magnify. In magnify, you make the wristwatch face large enough to be a cup holder. Again, in the ideation stage, it doesn't necessarily mean that your product will actually work or it's the best solutions, but the wildest or as many ideas as possible. So no judgment here, again, in the ideation stage. So input to other uses, you can frame the watch as a work of art. Yes, maybe you can do it. You can frame the watch as a work of art. In eliminate technique, you can remove the internal workings of the watch and replace them with a sundial. So you go back to the original watch, a sundial. So you remove the parts and make a sundial. So again, no judgment. I'm just laughing, but I'm actually not judging. Huh? So in reverse or rearrange, you change the watch hands to go counterclockwise. Push the watch face on the inside of the wristband to make the back of the watch the focal point in terms of design and fashion. So again, in the ideation stage, you make your ideas as broad as possible. Okay, so that's a scamper technique. So another technique is what we call mind mapping. So in this was developed by Tony Buzan in 1972. And it's a visual ideation technique that encourages you to draw connections between different sets of ideas or information. So in this technique, in mind mapping, you're actually trying to categorize and subcategorize your ideas, starting from the main subject or idea. So here's a mind map of design thinking. So design thinking can be done in 5 stages: empathize, define, ideate, prototype, and test. Empathize can further be broken down as observe. When you empathize, you actually observe, you immerse yourself with the situation or with the room, and you listen when you empathize. So when you define, you understand, you interpret, and you focus. You focus the focus on the problem. So based on the user's needs and insights. So in Ideate, you generate, you imagine, you filter, you choose. So in Prototype, you build, ask feedback, and refine. And in Test, back to the users, evaluation, and improve. So that's a mind map of design thinking. So this is another example of a mind map in choosing what shape is best for a sound speaker. So could it be a hollow chamber? And what are the possible characteristics if it's a hollow chamber? Uh, what if it's a cone shape? What if it's a shell shape or sliced igloo shape? So that's how the ideation technique called mind mapping works. So basically, you categorize your different ideas and subcategorize the other ideas. So other ideation techniques, again, I have mentioned earlier that I cannot give you all of the ideation techniques because there's a lot of ideation techniques. So maybe you can try this on your own, creative pause. So basically, you clear your mind and be aware of your surroundings so you can think of more innovative and creative ideas. Cheat storming, basically you're cheating here. You're going directly into choosing which ideas to advance to the prototype stage. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't work, but it's still an ideation technique. Crowdstorming is basically a marriage of brainstorming and crowdsourcing. Daydreaming, imagining, provocation, basically you show visuals and sketches to stimulate feedback and discussion or to provoke a response from your teammates or members. Forced relationships, you start with a stimulus word and again, you force a response from your teammates and ideas. So you can do role-playing, visualization, wishing, sketching, and sketch storming. Basically, sketch storming is sketching and brainstorming. And synectics. So basically, in synectics, you focus on creative ideas. Not necessarily innovative ideas, but creative ideas. Okay. So for the workshop, you will be asked to revisit the problem statements generated during the define stage, apply an ideation technique on the problem statement, generate a sketch, a mind map, or any illustration that will give you visualizations of the possible solutions, and construct ideas that will be utilized to generate the possible solutions to the problems. So you will be using the given format in your for the outputs of the ideation stage. So these are the references for this talk, and thank you. So I will be showing you next some sample outputs in the Ideate stage, maybe one in science and one in math. Thank you.